Emma Carter had never imagined that $500 could carry the weight of her entire world. Yet on that cold Tuesday morning, it did. The crisp bills she planned to withdraw weren't for a vacation or a shopping spree. They were meant to cover her rent, buy groceries for the week, and pay for her 12-year-old daughter Lily's asthma medication. Every dollar had already been assigned a purpose before it even reached her hands. Life had changed dramatically in the 18 months since her husband, Michael, passed away after suffering a sudden heart attack. One ordinary evening had shattered the future they had carefully built together. Michael had always been the steady one, the kind of man who planned ahead, paid every bill on time, and believed that even small savings could protect a family from hard times. Without him, Emma had been forced to learn everything herself. She worked mornings at a neighborhood bakery and spent evenings cleaning offices downtown. Sleep became a luxury she rarely enjoyed. Every payday disappeared almost as quickly as it arrived. Still, she never complained in front of Lily. Her daughter had already lost her father. Emma refused to let her lose hope, too. "Everything will be okay," she told Lily almost every night. Sometimes she believed it. Sometimes she simply hoped saying it often enough would make it true. That Tuesday morning, after dropping Lily off at school, Emma glanced at the folded rent notice tucked inside her purse. The landlord had been patient, but patience didn't last forever. She had exactly $500 left in her savings account. The emergency fund Michael had insisted they never touch unless they absolutely had to. Today was that day. The familiar brick building of First National Community Bank stood quietly on the corner of Maple Street. Emma had visited dozens of times over the years. Most employees knew her by name. She smiled politely as she stepped inside. The warm air carried the faint smell of fresh coffee and polished floors. Customers stood patiently in line while soft instrumental music played overhead. Emma joined the queue and rehearsed the numbers in her head. 200 for rent, 150 for groceries, 75 for Lily's medicine, the rest for gas until payday. It wasn't much, but it was enough to survive another week. "Next, please." Emma approached the counter where a young teller named Sophie greeted her with a friendly smile. "Good morning, Mrs. Carter." "Morning," Emma replied, sliding her debit card and driver's license across the counter. "I'd like to withdraw $500 from my savings account." "Of course." Sophie's fingers moved quickly across her keyboard. Emma waited quietly, staring at the small bowl of peppermint candies beside the register. Then something changed. Sophie's smile disappeared. Her eyes narrowed at the computer screen. She typed again, then again. A wrinkle formed across her forehead. Emma felt a strange knot tighten in her stomach. "Is everything all right?" Sophie didn't answer immediately. Instead, she glanced toward the office hallway behind the teller stations before looking back at the monitor. She swallowed, then leaned forward just enough so no one else could hear. Her voice was barely above a whisper. "Ma'am," Emma leaned closer. "Could you please sit down?" The words sent a chill racing through her body. "What?" Sophie's expression wasn't one of annoyance. It was concern, real concern. I think our branch manager needs to speak with you." Emma's heartbeat quickened. "Why? I'm so sorry," Sophie said softly. "I can't explain yet." For one terrifying moment, Emma's mind raced through every possible disaster. Had someone stolen her identity? Had the bank made a mistake? Was her account overdrawn? Had there been fraud? Or worse, had Michael left behind debts she never knew existed? The comfortable bank lobby suddenly felt unbearably small. Every sound seemed louder: the ticking wall clock, the printer humming nearby, customers chatting behind her. Emma slowly turned toward the waiting area, her knees suddenly weak. She lowered herself into one of the leather chairs, clutching her worn handbag tightly against her chest. Across the room, Sophie quietly disappeared into the manager's office. Emma watched through the glass walls as two employees stared at a computer screen. One pointed at something, the other shook his head, then both looked toward Emma, not with suspicion. With sympathy, that frightened her even more. 5 endless minutes passed, each second stretched longer than the last. Emma could barely breathe. Her imagination created nightmare after nightmare. Maybe the savings account was empty. Maybe someone had stolen everything Michael had worked so hard to save. Maybe she was about to lose the apartment. Maybe she'd have to tell Lily there would be no medicine this month, no groceries, no home. The office door finally opened. A tall man in his early 50s walked toward her. His silver name tag read, Daniel Reynolds, branch manager. His face carried the calm professionalism of someone who had delivered difficult news before. Mrs. Carter, Emma stood immediately. Yes, would you please come into my office? She followed him silently. The office door closed behind them with a soft click. Daniel gestured toward a chair. Emma sat. Her hands trembled so badly she intertwined her fingers to hide it. Daniel opened a folder, took a slow breath, and looked directly into her eyes. Mrs. Carter. He began gently. Before I explain what's happened, I need you to know that none of this appears to be your fault. Emma's heart pounded against her ribs. He turned the computer monitor toward her. The screen displayed page after page of bank transactions. Transfers, withdrawals, electronic authorizations, dates spanning months, then years. Emma frowned. I don't understand. Daniel's expression grew even more serious. That's exactly what worries us. He pointed to a series of withdrawals. According to our records, someone has been accessing your accounts for a very long time. Emma stared at the screen in disbelief. Her lips parted, but no words came out. Daniel folded his hands carefully, and Mrs. Carter, he paused. The person who authorized these transactions appears to have known your family extremely well. The room fell silent. Emma felt the blood drain from her face. Deep inside, before a single name was spoken, a terrible feeling settled into her heart. This wasn't the work of a stranger. It was someone she trusted. Someone who already knew exactly how much losing $500 would hurt. Emma felt as though the air had been sucked out of the room. She stared at the computer screen, her eyes scanning the rows of transactions she had never seen before. Withdrawal after withdrawal, online transfers, checks she had never written. Some were only a few $100s. Others were several thousand. Spread out over nearly 4 years, they blended into the normal flow of a busy account, small enough not to attract attention, but large enough to slowly drain away the life Michael had worked so hard to build. There has to be some mistake, Emma whispered, shaking her head. I've never approved any of these. Daniel Reynolds nodded sympathetically. That's what concerned us. We recently upgraded our fraud detection system. It flags unusual authorization patterns even if they happened years ago. Your account was selected for a manual review. Emma leaned closer to the monitor. But I check my balance. You check your checking account. Daniel replied gently. Most of these transactions came from the savings account and the investment account your husband opened years ago. Emma froze. The investment account, Daniel opened another file. Did your husband ever mention a family trust? Emma frowned. Only once. He said it was for Lily's future, college, emergencies, things like that. Daniel slowly nodded. Mrs. Carter, that account should have contained considerably more money than it does today. Her heart sank. How much more? Daniel hesitated for a moment. I'm afraid the missing amount is approximately $287,000. Emma stared at him. The number made no sense. It was too large to comprehend. Nearly $300,000. Michael had never earned that kind of salary. Then she remembered the inheritance. Several years before Michael died, his grandmother had passed away. She had owned farmland that had been sold after her death. Michael had inherited a significant portion, but he rarely talked about money. "We're saving it," he had told Emma one evening while they washed dishes together. "Not for us, for Lily. One day she'll have opportunities we never had." Emma had smiled and kissed his cheek. She had trusted him completely, and after he died, she had never thought to question where that money was. Tears blurred her vision. Someone stole Lily's future. Daniel handed her a box of tissues. "I'm truly sorry." Emma wiped her eyes before asking the question she was almost afraid to hear. "Who?" Daniel folded his hands. "We can't officially accuse anyone until the investigation is complete. But you have an idea." He looked at her carefully. "We do." He turned another document toward her. It contained copies of authorization forms, power of attorney requests, temporary account access forms. Every signature carried Michael's name, except they're fake, Emma whispered. Daniel nodded. "Our handwriting specialists believe several signatures were forged after your husband's death." Emma's stomach twisted. But who would even know these accounts existed? Daniel didn't answer immediately. Instead, he asked a different question. "Who handled your husband's paperwork after the funeral?" Emma closed her eyes. She remembered those painful days. She could barely eat, barely sleep, barely think. While she struggled to comfort Lily, one person had insisted on taking care of the legal documents. Michael's older brother, David, he had arrived carrying folders, speaking confidently. "Don't worry about any of this," he had said. "I'll make sure all the paperwork gets handled." At the time, Emma had been grateful. Now, her blood ran cold. "Oh my God." Daniel watched her expression change. "You've thought of someone." Emma slowly nodded. "David," she could barely say his name, "my brother-in-law." Daniel remained professional. "I can't confirm that, but I can tell you that many authorization requests were submitted in person." Emma swallowed hard, and the security records indicate they were submitted by the same individual. She covered her mouth. "No." Daniel opened one final document. "Mrs. Carter, these forms included personal information." "What kind?" "Your social security number, my birthday, Lily's information." The answers to your security questions. Emma felt physically sick. Only family knew those answers. Only someone close enough to hear everyday conversations. Someone who had celebrated birthdays with them. Someone Michael trusted. Someone Lily called Uncle David. Tears rolled down Emma's cheeks. She wasn't crying over the money anymore. She was grieving another loss. Trust, memories flooded back. David insisting on keeping copies of financial papers. David offering to organize insurance documents. David volunteering to meet with accountants. David saying, "Family takes care of family." Every act that once seemed generous now looked carefully planned. Every kindness now felt like manipulation. Daniel broke the silence. "We've already contacted our fraud investigation department." Emma looked up. "What happens now?" "They'll collect evidence before notifying law enforcement." Emma nodded slowly. Then another painful realization struck her. "My family." Daniel waited. "They all believed David." "What do you mean?" Emma laughed bitterly through her tears. After Michael died, people slowly stopped calling. She looked toward the office window. "David told everyone I couldn't manage money. He said I was irresponsible. He told relatives I was wasting Michael's inheritance. He claimed he kept helping me financially because I kept making bad decisions." Daniel frowned. "So while he was stealing from you, he was convincing everyone that I was the one wasting the money." Emma lowered her head. "When my car broke down, nobody offered help. When I had to work 2 jobs, people whispered that I'd always been lazy. When Lily stopped taking dance classes because we couldn't afford them." Her voice cracked. "David told everyone I was teaching her to expect handouts." Daniel quietly shook his head. "I've seen financial fraud before." But this is personal. Emma nodded. It always was. She suddenly remembered something else. 3 months earlier, she had asked David if he could lend her $500 until payday. He had laughed. "I think it's time you learned how to budget." Those words echoed painfully in her mind. He had refused to lend her money. Money that had belonged to her all along. For the first time since entering the bank, Emma wasn't shaking from fear. She was shaking with determination. She looked directly at Daniel. "I don't want revenge." He nodded. "I understand. I want the truth. And I want my daughter to know that her father kept his promise." Daniel smiled gently. "We'll do everything we can." Emma stood and looked one last time at the endless list of stolen transactions. For 18 months, she had blamed herself for every unpaid bill, every sleepless night, every sacrifice Lily had quietly accepted. Now she knew the truth. She hadn't failed her family. Someone had stolen the life Michael had left for them. And before this was over, the man responsible would have to answer for every single dollar and every single lie. For the first time in nearly 2 years, Emma walked out of the bank without feeling defeated. She wasn't carrying the $500 she had come to withdraw. Instead, she carried something far more valuable. The truth. As she sat in her aging sedan outside the bank, she gripped the steering wheel and closed her eyes. Tears rolled silently down her cheeks, not tears of helplessness, but tears of relief. Every sleepless night, every moment she had blamed herself for failing Lily, every whispered rumor that she was bad with money. It had all been built on lies. She took a deep breath. No more. She whispered. The next morning, Daniel Reynolds introduced Emma to Special Investigator Rachel Morgan from the bank's fraud division. Rachel was calm, sharp, and impossible to intimidate. After listening carefully to Emma's story, she spread several files across the conference table. "We're going to need your patience," Rachel said. Emma nodded. "I've waited almost 2 years already." Rachel smiled slightly. "Good, because the strongest cases aren't built with anger. They're built with evidence." Over the following weeks, Emma learned just how carefully David had planned everything. He had forged Michael's signature on legal documents. He had submitted fake authorization forms. He had opened a private mailing address so bank notices would never reach Emma. He had even changed contact information on several accounts, ensuring every financial statement was delivered somewhere Emma would never see it. But David had made one mistake. He had grown greedy. When the bank upgraded its fraud detection software, unusual authorization patterns were automatically flagged. Every transfer had been linked to the same device, the same IP addresses, and surveillance footage from multiple branch visits. Rachel looked up from one report. He thought spreading the theft over several years would hide it. Emma asked quietly, "Will he be arrested?" Rachel didn't answer immediately. Eventually, "We're waiting for what?" For him to make one more move. Meanwhile, David continued living exactly as he always had. He drove a brand new luxury SUV. He posted pictures of expensive vacations online. He bragged about investment properties at family gatherings. Whenever relatives complimented his success, he smiled modestly. Just hard work. Emma watched silently. She didn't argue. She didn't accuse him. She didn't tell anyone about the investigation. Her silence made David comfortable. He believed she still knew nothing. A month later, another family event brought everyone together. It was Emma's mother-in-law's 70th birthday. The large banquet hall buzzed with laughter and conversation. David stood near the center of the room, entertaining relatives with exaggerated stories about his business success. Emma noticed familiar faces: her cousin Linda, Michael's Aunt Patricia, his childhood friend Brian. People who had slowly disappeared from her life after believing David's lies. Some smiled politely. Others barely acknowledged her. It still hurt, but not as much as before, because she finally understood. They hadn't abandoned her because she was weak. They had been deceived. David noticed Emma across the room. With a confident grin, he walked over carrying a glass of champagne. "Emma," she smiled politely. "David, I heard you're still working those 2 jobs." "I am." "You know," he sighed dramatically, "life would be easier if you planned your finances better." Emma simply nodded. "I'll remember that." His smile widened. He expected an argument. Instead, he found none. He walked away feeling victorious. Emma watched him disappear into the crowd. Rachel had warned her, never interrupt someone who's making a mistake. 3 days later, David made the mistake investigators had been waiting for. He attempted to transfer another $48,000 from one of the remaining investment accounts, except the account had already been frozen. The transfer triggered an immediate fraud alert. This time there was no delay. Rachel called Emma that afternoon. "He's done." Emma's heart raced. What happened? He tried again, and Rachel smiled. "Police have everything they need." 2 weeks later, David hosted a lavish housewarming party for friends, business partners, and family. Nearly everyone accepted the invitation. Emma almost didn't go. Rachel insisted. "You should be there." "Why?" "Because sometimes the truth deserves witnesses." The evening felt strangely normal. Music played across the backyard. Servers carried trays of expensive food. Guests admired David's enormous new home. He looked happier than ever. Standing near the outdoor fireplace, he raised a glass. "I couldn't have achieved any of this without the support of my wonderful family." Emma lowered her eyes. The irony was painful. Then the music stopped. Every conversation fell silent. 2 marked police vehicles rolled slowly into the driveway. Behind them came another unmarked sedan. Several officers stepped out. David frowned. There must be some mistake. A Detective Harris approached calmly. "David Carter." "Yes, we have a warrant for your arrest." The smile vanished from David's face. "For what?" The detective unfolded several pages, multiple counts of financial fraud, forgery, identity theft, wire fraud, and theft from protected family trust accounts. The backyard became completely silent. David laughed nervously. "This is ridiculous." He looked around. "Emma." She remained still. "Tell them." Emma met his eyes for the first time that evening. "I already did." Confusion spread across his face. "You knew." "I know everything." The detective continued reading. "You have the right to remain silent." David's confident posture disappeared as officers placed handcuffs around his wrists. Shocked relatives stared in disbelief. Aunt Patricia covered her mouth. Brian shook his head. Linda looked toward Emma with tears in her eyes. David desperately searched the crowd for someone, anyone, to defend him. No one moved. As he was escorted toward the police car, he turned back one last time. "You planned this." Emma answered quietly. "No, you planned it yourself." The police car pulled away. No one spoke for several long moments. Finally, Michael's mother slowly walked toward Emma. Tears streamed down her face. "I believed him." Emma nodded silently. "I'm so sorry." Emma hugged the woman who had once turned her away. Years of pain couldn't disappear in a single moment, but something important had changed. The lies no longer had a place to hide, and for the first time since Michael's death, Emma felt something she hadn't felt in a very long time: peace. She didn't smile because David had been arrested. She smiled because Lily's father had finally been proven right. He had trusted the truth, and in the end, the truth had never stopped fighting for them. The weeks following David's arrest felt strangely quiet. For nearly 2 years, Emma had lived under the constant weight of fear of unpaid bills, losing her apartment, disappointing Lily, and wondering why life kept getting harder, no matter how hard she worked. Now, for the first time, she woke up without that crushing feeling in her chest. The investigation moved quickly. David's computer, financial records, and personal accounts revealed everything investigators needed. Hidden folders contained forged documents, fake authorization forms, and spreadsheets tracking every dollar he had stolen. Even worse, detectives uncovered text messages in which David bragged to a business associate that Emma was too overwhelmed to ever notice. He had never viewed her as family. He had seen her as an easy target. Months Later, Emma sat quietly in the courtroom beside Lily. The courtroom was filled with relatives, reporters, and bank officials. Everyone wanted to witness the end of a case that had shocked the entire community. David no longer looked like the confident businessman everyone admired. His expensive tailored suits had been replaced by a plain prison uniform. The man who once walked into every room, believing he was the smartest person there, now avoided everyone's eyes. When the prosecutor displayed the evidence, the courtroom fell silent. Bank surveillance footage, forged signatures, electronic transfer records, security camera images showing David submitting fake paperwork, digital records proving he had changed mailing addresses and contact information without Emma's knowledge. Every lie was carefully dismantled. David's attorney attempted to argue that Michael had verbally given David permission to help manage the accounts. The judge wasn't convinced. There is overwhelming evidence. The judge said firmly that the defendant abused the trust placed in him by his own family. Emma squeezed Lily's hand. After a brief recess, the verdict was delivered: guilty. The single word echoed through the courtroom. David lowered his head. For the first time since Michael's death, Emma felt a chapter of her life finally closing. Over the next several months, the court ordered the recovery of David's remaining assets. His luxury home was sold. His expensive vehicles were auctioned. Investment accounts were frozen. While not every dollar could be recovered, bank's fraud protection program and the court's restitution order ensured that Emma received most of what had been stolen. One afternoon, Daniel Reynolds invited Emma back to the bank. This time, she walked through the same front doors with a very different feeling. Daniel smiled as she entered. "I've been looking forward to this day." He handed her a folder. Inside were updated account statements. The numbers barely seemed real. The stolen inheritance had been restored. Lily's college fund had been rebuilt. The mortgage on a modest new home had already been approved. Emma covered her mouth, unable to speak. Daniel smiled warmly. "Your husband planned well. He really did. We're just making sure his plans finally reach the people he intended." Tears filled Emma's eyes. "Thank you, no," Daniel replied. "Thank you for refusing to give up." Life slowly became peaceful again. Emma left her evening cleaning job and accepted a full-time management position at the bakery where she had worked for years. With regular hours, she was finally home every evening. Lily returned to dance classes. She no longer worried about whether her asthma medication would be affordable each month. Mother and daughter even adopted an energetic golden retriever from the local animal shelter. They named him Hope. It seemed like the perfect name. One Sunday afternoon, Emma visited Michael's grave carrying fresh white lilies. Lily stood quietly beside her. Emma gently brushed a few leaves away from the headstone. "We did it," she whispered. "We protected what you left for us." A soft breeze moved through the cemetery. Emma smiled through tears. "I wish you could see Lily now." Lily placed a handwritten letter beneath the flowers. "I got into the advanced science program, Dad," she whispered. "Mom says you'll always know." Emma wrapped an arm around her daughter. They stood there together for several quiet minutes, not crying, remembering. A few weeks later, Emma announced something that surprised everyone. Instead of keeping every recovered dollar for herself, she established the Michael Carter Memorial Scholarship, helping single parents who wanted to return to school or learn a new trade after losing a spouse. "It saved our future," Emma said during the small dedication ceremony. "If our story can help someone else rebuild theirs, then Michael's kindness continues." The scholarship quickly became a beloved community program. Each year, another struggling parent received the opportunity to start over. Emma knew Michael would have approved. As time passed, several relatives came to apologize. Michael's mother visited often. "I'm ashamed I believed David," she admitted one afternoon. Emma poured her a cup of tea and smiled gently. "We all trusted the wrong person. Can you forgive me?" Emma looked out the kitchen window before answering. "I already have." Her mother-in-law smiled hopefully. "Does that mean things can go back to how they were?" Emma shook her head kindly. "No." The older woman looked confused. Emma reached across the table and took her hand. "Forgiveness lets go of anger." She smiled softly. "But trust has to be earned." Again, there was no bitterness in her voice, only wisdom. Years later, Lily graduated from college with honors. As she crossed the stage to receive her diploma, Emma stood in the audience with tears of pride streaming down her face. Everything Michael had dreamed of for their daughter had finally come true. After the ceremony, Lily hugged her mother tightly. "You never gave up on me." Emma smiled. "I promised your father I never would." Lily looked thoughtfully at her. "Do you ever think about Uncle David?" Emma paused for a moment. Then she looked at the families celebrating around them, children laughing, parents smiling, graduates hugging loved ones. Finally, she answered, "Not very often." "Why?" "Because he no longer has a place in our story." Lily smiled. "I like that." Emma looked up at the bright blue sky. For so long, she had believed revenge meant making someone suffer. She had been wrong. The sweetest revenge wasn't watching David lose everything. It was refusing to let his betrayal steal another single day of her happiness. He had tried to leave her with nothing. Instead, she had rebuilt a life filled with peace, purpose, and love. And as Emma walked across the campus with Lily, laughing together under the warm afternoon sun, she realized something Michael had always believed was true. Money could be stolen, trust could be broken, even hearts could be shattered. But courage, kindness, and hope, when held onto long enough, could build a future no betrayal could ever destroy.